I'm Josh.
And I'm Ben.
And this is the Accidental Marketers Podcast, where we have conversations with marketing leaders at tech companies, as well as business owners we think are doing interesting things, with a heavy focus on growth strategies. We hope you enjoy the show.
All right. Hi, I'm Ben Yost, and I'm joined by my partner, Josh Elkin. We're the founders of LinkFlow and co-hosts of the Accidental Marketers Podcast, where we feature top marketing and growth leaders in the B2B tech and SaaS space. This episode is brought to you by LinkFlow. We're a link building service geared toward the software and tech industry that helps our clients increase traffic and revenues through high quality link building and SEO strategy. Listen, Rich, a year or so ago, we had a healthcare software company as a client that wanted to rank for super competitive terms, but they were sitting on page 3 of Google and getting basically no clicks. We helped them 10x their traffic and outrank Wikipedia and New York Times in about 6 months. We got into this business because we heard so many horror stories and we experienced firsthand shady link builders not being transparent and providing low quality links with little care as to the impact the links might be having on the site. So if you want to learn more about what we do over at LinkFlow, go to linkflow.ai, and you can email me personally even at ben@linkflow.ai. That said, it's my pleasure to introduce Rich Wagner today as our guest. Rich is a healthcare technology leader and current CEO of Raven Health, a behavioral health tech company. Prior to Raven, Richard spent 9 years at Ability Network and Inovalon in a series of leadership roles, culminating in the $1.2 billion sale of Ability to Inovalon in 2018. Rich currently lives in New York City with his wife, Molly. So again, turn things over to Josh. Rich, it's great to have you on.
Great to have you,
Thanks for
Rich.
having me on, guys.
Yeah, welcome. Rich was also a college classmate of mine, so we know each other quite well, but it's fun to have him, fun to follow his journey throughout his career and see him, achieve success. And Rich, why don't you tell us a bit about your background and kind of how you got to this point as CEO of Raven?
Yeah, so Ben and Josh, thanks for having me on. Josh, I think we've known each other for over 20 years, so great to be on the podcast today. So yeah, I've spent all of my career in healthcare and healthcare technology over 15 years. But I've been saying that for a few years now, so maybe it's closer to 20 than 15, but who's counting? Spent some time in healthcare private equity right out of college. And then after graduate school, had the opportunity to work primarily right in a compliance role, actually, for a healthcare technology company. But that quickly changed as I joined, or as the company I was with was acquired by Ability Network. This is back in 2013. And it was a really exciting time in my career, right, where you're working for a company that's focused on EBITDA and maybe sustaining operations. And all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're backed by a Bain Capital Ventures portfolio company, just got done with its Series B and looking to do essentially a roll-up in the industry. So I had the opportunity working for one of my mentors then, a gentleman by the name of Ken Ernsting, who later became the COO at Ability. And I remember one day I walked into his office and I said, Ken, I see that we got a number of things going on. I know I'm your compliance officer, but I'd love to get involved on the business side. And he said, it's a good thing you came in today. We're about to close an acquisition of a company out in New Jersey for north of $100 million, and I need a guy to run the integration of that company into Ability. So quite the first opportunity to be on the business side, but we did that acquisition and integration into Ability. Did another close to a dozen in the next several years. Next thing you know, Summit Partners comes and recaps the company in 2014. held the company on for a few more years, ran that integration management office under Ken for a while, took on a couple of other responsibilities on the project management side, some other operational functions of the company, culminating in that sale to Inovalon in 2018. And I'll tell you, when you get an opportunity to work at a high growth company that's kind of figured out product market fit, and it's just a matter of adding the right people, the right culture, and getting the right pieces. It's a fun ride, and those few years went very quickly. And so yeah, that took me to Inovalon, where I spent another couple years bouncing around some functions of the company. Spent time in the strategy office. It was fun with another mentor of mine, Justin Silver. And the opportunity came up. It was right around when the pandemic rolled around. It was the beginning of 2020. And I had been at Inovalon. My contract was coming up with the company, and post acquisition. And I was also sitting on the board of a series of nationwide behavioral healthcare clinics focused on the ABA therapy space, which, for those of you who aren't familiar with healthcare, it's the applied behavior analysis piece, and that's the part of behavioral healthcare that focuses on therapy and for individuals on the autism spectrum. And I had been sitting on that company's board for a while. They had just done an exit to a big private equity firm, and I had the opportunity to marry up my experience on the health IT side with the behavioral healthcare side, and that led us to Raven, which is a data collection company in the ABA therapy space, and where I've been for the last couple of years.
Wild.
Awesome. Cool story. Yeah. So you went kind of from small company to big company back to small company again. And so did you help start Raven, or were you brought on after it already was started?
Yeah, so Raven itself was previously known as a company called Nightingale app. And I got stories galore here. Nightingale was actually, it was formed around 6 or 7 years ago. It was your classic Silicon Valley startup story. It was founded by a couple of MIT kids during their freshman year in their dorm room. They dropped out of school, took it out to the West Coast, raised money went through the Y Combinator program, a number of other prominent Silicon Valley VC wealthy investors put money behind it. And then the opportunity came up in 2020, again, right before the pandemic started, for a new ownership group to come in and buy that company out, the IP associated with it. They came in, rebranded the company to Raven, keeping on that bird theme. And then that was when I came aboard around the summer of 2020. So I was not a founder, but it definitely fits within my wheelhouse of taking a company that has figured out product market fit and is starting to really ramp up marketing effort, right? Try to grow from call it a seed round, Series A type round company, and through its growth stage. So it's been a wild ride these last couple of years for sure.
That's gnarly. Hey, I've got a question, Rich. You had mentioned, you kind of transitioned into that integration role early on in your career. What was that like, going from compliance to integration? How did you kind of handle that? Did you lean on your mentor a lot for that? What was that like?
Yeah, it was different. I was going through a business school program at NYU at the Stern School of Business. So, and I worked in private equity before, so I had some business background. But the role that I was thrown into was much bigger than I would have expected. I think the biggest help was having a mentor who believed in me. He and I it's not like he just threw this on me out of nowhere, even though it may seem like that. He and I had discussions, about various areas I thought the business could improve or opportunities we had. And but nonetheless, I mean, when you're going from, looking at business associate agreements and other contracts day-to-day basis, to thinking about how you're going to fit 80 people in an organization into your operations and consolidating P&L and L and hitting 100-day milestones, it's quite different. I think, we were fortunate. First of all, it was literally in my, or almost figuratively in my backyard. I live on the west side of Manhattan, and it was just right over the river in New Jersey where the company was based. But the other thing that we did well, that I think I would recommend anyone doing an integration of a company for the first time, was that for the first one, prior to me getting there, we hired a consulting company. I think it was PwC actually, and we asked them to, we retained them to help with the integration, but we told them that we would like them to not only help us with that first integration, but also show us how to do it, because we were going to take the keys and run with it through a series of planned acquisitions, those 8 or 9 or 10, whatever it was after that. And so having kind of a best practice from day one, and as granular as department by department, function by function, right? How to consolidate all of these functions, and having a skilled professional show us how to do it before we took it on ourselves. I think that was critical to our success, and it continues to be a blueprint that Ability and now Novalon follows today.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's kind of like you had the playbook of how to do a roll up, and it's just kind of rinse and repeat almost after that, sounds like.
Yeah, I think you get the playbook, and you have the same cast of characters, right? The same team. Yes. who knew how to do it, and you keep them around, and then next thing you know, essentially you have a best-in-class integration team internally. And that's not to say that our integration management office was the best-in-class piece. We learned from the best, and it helped us. Mm-hmm. But having those functional leaders across the company, right? Like our CIO was fantastic, and consolidating data centers, right? Our CTO, same thing. Our VP of marketing knew how to consolidate functions and basically turn on lead gen from day one, and even sales, right? Being able to cross-sell into a new organization based off whatever new shiny tool you just bought on the market, sell that into your existing customer base. That was a tremendously successful strategy for the company.
Cool. Yeah. Ben knows I'm kind of obsessed with the acquisition and roll-up strategy. So I love learning about companies who have done that.
Yeah. And it's just the whole idea of like managing people and merging them. Like, it's such a huge feat. Acquiring a company is like a big lift in and of itself, but then merging the teams,
cultures, teams,
like it's a crazy experience. And so I find that really interesting that what you shared. Yeah.
Totally.
So moving kind of to Raven. So now we're back. You've done these big roll-ups, integrations. Now you're back kind of at a fledgling startup. You've got some product market fit. Talk a little about the product market fit. Maybe like how many customers, like who are your target customers, and how many do you have right now?
Yeah. So what brought me to the company, in addition to it just being a nice marriage of kind of backgrounds that I had, was the promise of the company itself. So, I explain this to people who are not in the ABA therapy space, because it's a problem that's really like present in all of healthcare. Think back to the last time you went into a doctor's office, right? Annual physical, or, any other sort of checkup or whatever. I think about the last time I went, which was back in the fall, and I went and sat on one of those like, flimsy kind of like paper lined gurney bed things, right? Yep. And my doctor, who I've known for years and years, right? She goes over to a desktop in the corner of the room and proceeds to basically like type in whatever I'm saying word for word, occasionally looking over her shoulder, asking me, what brought me in today, whatever. And if you think about it, right, this whole experience is ludicrous, right? Where you have basically the most precious resource in all of healthcare, like the healthcare provider. What we've essentially done with electronic medical records today is turn them into the most expensive data entry person on the globe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what we've done at Raven is we've produced a tool, what we call data collection tool, but it's just makes that process of taking data and from an offline world and moving it to an online world seamless, right? We do this through things like intuitive UX, so a provider's not navigating through a series of like complicated web pages or like nested menus. We're pioneering the first in our space, pioneering some tools that are actually enabling passive data collection. So think things like speech to text translation, natural language processing, even AI at the point of care, to make that a little bit more of a smoother process. This is a problem that's present in all of healthcare, this like data collection piece. But in behavioral healthcare, it's particularly a big problem. And when we talk to people in the industry, we say like in ABA therapy, right? It's a particular problem when face-to-face interaction with, in other parts of healthcare, you call them the patient, and ABA therapy, you call them clients. With face-to-face interaction with a client, when that's actually part of the prescribed therapy, but you're taking away from that to have them be dialed into a laptop somewhere, that process has to change. And so we created a tool that makes it easier. It actually allows, first of all, it enables that face-to-face care in a much more intuitive, like user-friendly way, which is great, but it also makes clinicians more productive, right? They're able to see more clients per day. They're not relying on their memory to write data down into a notebook or transcribe it into an EMR later. And so we're making that process, a lot less frustrating and actually enjoyable for some of our customers.
Got it. So they're using an app and real time, like entering things into this app as they're talking to the patient, effectively.
Correct. Yeah. And so much more intuitive, and that's exactly it.
I remember when I went to the doctor when I lived in Seattle, they didn't have that, but instead they said, they'd have some like intern come in and just take notes. Which is like a smart way to do it, but at the same time, like that's your most private, like personal moment when you're with your doctor. And I always felt super weird having some like 21-year-old girl in the room as the doctor's like, all right, like take your pants off now. Like it was just super awkward.
They call those data scribes. That's actually a whole cottage industry. And what's funny is that there are companies out there who actually turn on a recording device, and then they'll have like offshore facilities in Philippines, India, where they will do that data transcription. It's a whole thing.
And the recording makes more sense to me than like, I don't want another, like, I don't want like a teenager in this tiny little room with me as I'm naked with my doctor. But yeah, no, what you're saying makes a ton of sense. Okay. So you're targeting, kind of autism clinics, therapists, that type of thing. How do you, this is kind of always the challenge with the clients that we were with, is how do you find them? How do you get in touch with them? And how do you convey the value of your product to them? Like, do you call them? Do you walk into their office? Like, what are you doing to get there?
Yeah, no, great question. So we know that our product is best suited for clinicians in this field. What's interesting and much different from what I'm used to in this industry is that the demographic of our target user it skews very heavily towards young women. So 85% of our users, 85% of the market of the credential in the industry, which is called a board certified behavior analyst, 85% tend to be women, and the average age of a practitioner is under the age of 30. So this gives us a big advantage, right? In that we know where these people tend to hang out. on the internet, right? You could find them on Instagram, on TikTok, right? You can use social media pretty effectively to reach them. Also, digital marketing in general, right, is a helpful tool. But where we tend to struggle, and I think many in this industry tend to struggle with, is how do you convince someone like this that you don't just have another piece of like boring healthcare software. And so we made a very conscious decision a couple of years ago, right around the time when I joined, to brand our tool in a way that would appeal to, or in our company that would appeal to this younger generation, right? I'm not going to name names, but if you look at some names of our competitors or other healthcare technology companies in the space, you tend to see these like company names that are made up words, right? Has some healthcare variant type of a word like meta, or, you know, God, I can't even give any away without tipping the hand. But it usually is some like amalgamation of a weird word that doesn't really mean anything. And so we said, no, you know, our users, right, tend to go on, you know, they take an Uber to work, they order a Starbucks from their app, right? They may go after work, they use their Peloton, right? They aspire to own some luxury brand. We want to serve up a brand to them that really resonates. And that's where Raven came from. It's something like a real word that is cool and they like, and because after all, they're going to spend 8 hours a day on this thing, right? Yeah. Versus what they spend outside of the office. And we thought between the user experience that we're delivering and the user interface, which are again like fresh, modeled after things like Netflix and Peloton, Spotify, that our brand should match that. And that's what we've tried to do. And we'll show up at trade shows, for instance, with our cool logo and big LED screens, and that does resonate with users. We find a lot of people coming by because they just want to see what the buzz is about.
That's cool.
Very cool. So you talked a little bit about like Instagram, where these people hang out, right? Because they're sub 30, kind of online. They live online. Have you, I guess what's worked for you? We're marketers, so we're always interested in what's worked for you from a digital marketing standpoint. Like what's been successful?
Yeah. Are you guys running ads, like doing things like that?
Yeah, we're running ads. Which in our ads, we tailor them to skew by people in that decision-making process, right? So a user of our tool may be young and tends to be female, right? So, and we know where they hang out, whether, like I said, Instagram, even Facebook, right? But when you start to get up the chain into maybe who the decision maker and the economic buyer of the tool is going to be, it's going to be someone who might be more mid-career, mid 30s, late 30s, early 40s. These people tend to hang out more on Facebook, right, or LinkedIn. And so from a social perspective, we are able to tailor different ads by each segment, right? Mm-hmm. So, our Instagram, like ads that we run on Instagram, right, they might be like edgy in the voice of someone who might be a user of our app, right? But our LinkedIn ads are going to look much different, right? They're going to focus more on a more professional audience. We're going to talk more about some of the key business factors, the business aspects that goes into a decision-making process that'll come in. For instance, we have found that in contrast to our competitors who may take 3 months to teach someone how to use one of their, piece of like older technology, it takes our users typically like 15 minutes to learn how to use the app. And in a high turnover environment, like you're seeing not only in ABA therapy, but all of healthcare with technicians, this is a big deal. You don't want to educate someone on how to use a tool to see them leave 3 months later. You want to get them up and going on something that's easy to use, and may even keep them around if it's like a cool enough product. So that's something we sell, and that's the messaging that we hit clinic owners on. We hit the usability side and association being a cool thing to our younger Instagram audience.
That's wild. Yeah. I'm also curious about LinkedIn ads, and have you guys seen decent success running LinkedIn ads in general? Because I've had experience doing Instagram and Facebook ads in a previous agency, but I've never done LinkedIn ads, and I've heard mixed reviews about them. What has been your experience thus far using that?
Yeah, I think the jury is still out. We're still measuring. We're still experimenting there. I do find LinkedIn ads to be a lot more expensive, right? Which is the downside. However, you are able to target, which is to a pretty astonishing degree, which is helpful for us, right? Because we are targeting by a specific credential. So you could get pretty granular in terms of hitting someone with that, 4-letter acronym at the end of their name, which is helpful. But yeah, we're still seeing what the ROI is there. It's definitely part of our spend mix. Will continue to be so. But yeah, we're still looking at it.
Cool.
Is there any sort of thing you've tried with marketing that you thought would go well and has just totally flopped?
Yeah, I kind of went against my instinct with this one, but we wanted to give it a shot. We thought our tool, we know it still is, our tool is so easy to use that we thought if we went through a complete kind of self-service model where we just direct people to our product and just basically give them a free access to it, let them start using it in a B2C model, right? They would see the value and continue to use it. We found as we went to market earlier this year that having a little bit more of a hand-holding process through that to help see not only the value, but help with onboarding and showing how we could fit into the workflow of a provider, that was really important. And so, we weren't burned by it or anything, but it was something that we definitely learned within the first couple months and pivoted. And I think that's the beauty of being in a startup or startup-like environment, the ability to quickly pivot and change your marketing approach, right? If something's not working, that's something that we've been able to do very well, and it's been a big help.
And kind of on the converse of that, is there anything that you thought would be this might work, and it's just been huge, very successful?
Yeah, I'll go back to the branding side. So I'm one of those guys who is used to coming from the world of healthcare technology where names don't really matter, right? Brand isn't really a thing. As long as you show ROI to the clinician, they'll buy. I was a little skeptical with some of the branding and some of the investment we made into it until I saw how that performed at trade shows. Right. Mm-hmm. How I saw people come up to our booth. And I'll say this too, maybe one of the underrated things of having a strong brand too is how that affects other parts of the business, notably recruiting, right? We are able, I'll not forget it. One of the first trade shows we went to earlier this year, we had been very successful in bringing some top talent to the company. And, I spoke to another CEO of a competitor, and he came over and he said, "Are you guys having as hard of a time finding people to come to your company?" And I was I kind of looked at him. I was I guess, I don't know. But he told me, he gave me a story in terms of how difficult it was for him to hire just low level people, and to me, I thought, wow, that was when I really was the brand we have is not only good at attracting customers, but people as well.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a great point. You didn't want to make him feel bad and be like, no, we're crushing it. But.
Yeah, we'd buy more sticks because we can't beat off enough potential employees.
Yeah, I mean, granted, it is that environment right now where everyone was looking to make a change. So I could be eating my words here in a year. Who knows?
Right now,
Yeah.
are you mostly remote? Are you all in office? What's that look like for you?
We're hybrid. I so it's funny because even before the pandemic started, I had worked remotely for good 6 or 7 years. My wife Molly, she was a Broadway performer for a number of years, and so she had one place in the world where she could work, a 2 square mile area, and I could pretty much go in wherever I wanted. So I was the one who was commuting, going out to where we were in Minneapolis for a while, Boston, and DC. So I had been working remotely for a while. I saw the value of it. But I still, at the same time, saw that you need to have that face-to-face interaction. Doesn't have to be every day, but it has to be regular enough, right? Because there are just certain ideas that come out being in an office that won't, if you're in your sweatpants, sitting around all day. And so we do have two offices. Our headquarters is here in Midtown Manhattan, where I'm calling in from today. We also have our engineering and tech team based in the Denver area, but depending on the role, people can be remote and productive. I'm of the mind where, hey, if you could be productive, we could have you wherever you are.
Yeah. No, I totally, we relate. Like we're fully remote. Ben's in Argentina. I'm in Austin, and our team's all over the US. And it's just, yeah, one thing I won't say we struggle with, but it's like we kind of are like, well, how do we keep things fun? How do we keep people engaged when you're not meeting up with your team every day? And like
Build a culture. Like, how do you build a
culture? How do you keep culture?
on the internet?
Exactly. And
Without it kind of
Yeah.
just fading into the ether that is the online world,
it definitely,
Yeah.
we haven't nailed that yet, but it's something we're trying, but it's hard remote, to keep that culture. So yeah, maybe the office thing definitely has some benefits to it in that regard.
Yeah, and what I wouldn't sleep on either is that there are people out there who are looking to get into an office, right? Like we hired someone recently, and she mentioned to me, she was like, I'm just itching to get into an office. I've been tired of being. I mean, now granted, this is Manhattan, but she's like, I'm tired of being in my 200 square foot apartment, right?
The
I
worst
want
place
to have
be
the
remote.
opportunity to see other people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I definitely understand that. I mean, part of me definitely misses like leaving my house. Definitely
Yeah.
now. Like in general, because especially during the pandemic, it's like I didn't leave at all for anything, hardly. And I have to like start creating new hobbies to get myself to leave the house one time a day, because otherwise I just, I won't do it. So yeah, it's interesting. I would love to get us in a position where we're also, potentially got one or two offices at some point and doing, uh, in office days every now and again.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So you went from being working in companies at pretty high level to now the buck stops with you. You're the CEO. What's, I guess, as CEO, what's something that's been maybe harder than something you didn't think about that now you have to think about that's been harder than you thought, just being CEO?
Well, that's a good question. I think everything is harder when you're the CEO, and you don't think about a lot of stuff. But I never had a problem with the accountability piece, right? I think that's what drives a lot of people to the role in the first place. But the I think everything from being aware of what kind of culture you're setting. I think that's a going back on that's a big point, right? A great culture can be an enormous tailwind. The wrong culture, and I'm sure all of us have been in places like this, right? The wrong culture is completely debilitating. And knowing that stop, to use your term, Josh, like the buck stops with me on that, like that's something I know that If I gone unchecked, right, we don't make a deliberate choice what kind of culture we want, that could have disastrous effects for sure. Um, I mean, everything else, all the big decisions that need to be made, even the small decisions. But it's like, I think the biggest thing is being able to delineate between what are those small, like inconsequential decisions versus I think Jeff Bezos talks about it a lot. He talks about how he considers a good work day when he's able to focus on those like two or three like really important decisions and come to a decision on those and try to avoid the noise. I think that's good advice for someone, especially first time CEOs. There are going to be a ton of decisions. And it's not a question about micromanaging. I think good CEOs know that they need to hire extremely capable teams and push as much as you can onto them and let them grow. It's trying to figure out what are the most important decisions that need to be made and making sure that those get made immediately, or not immediately, but with enough thought put into it, but not delaying on those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's been a huge piece of kind of how I think how we've structured our organization is that we've focused on hiring capable people and then let them do their job and do it well, right? We tell pretty much everyone that we hire, we're not going to micromanage you. We expect you to be able to do your job, and we're going to let you do it, right?
Very true.
Yeah.
And Ben's had to tell me multiple times, like, because sometimes my inclination is to like jump in on something, be like, all right, and just steamroll it and be like, all right, guys, like, here's what we're going to do. And Ben will slack me and be like, hang back on this. Michelle's our new head of SEO. Let her run with this one. And he's right. He's totally right. And just empowering people who are team leads to do their thing. And you step back is like, as someone who was not, a CEO before, is like, that's such a good learning moment. And it just makes people feel so much more empowered and invested in their career when you let them take the reins and kind of like take the lead on things, and you step back.
Yeah,
you feel value too. You know that. Good leadership.
What would you say? Just not just Raven, but like personally or professionally, what's one big challenge that you've had to overcome?
So I guess the biggest challenge I ever had to come was both personal and professional in nature. So it was back in 2017, and so I mentioned I was serving as the lead of the integration management office. So we were acquiring companies left and right. And I had just gone on vacation with my wife, did a quick getaway before coming back to New York. And then I was flying out the next day to go to Minneapolis to do an integration of a new company we just bought. So, great time away. Basically, I had enough time after we came back from Europe to throw my stuff at home, took the next flight out the next morning to Minneapolis. And we got through our integration meeting, about ready to go out to dinner as a team. And then I got the call from my mother that, my dad, who was sick at the time, was being put in hospice. You need to come to Arizona right away. So it was, I'll never forget that week, just dropping my bag, like dropping bags in New York, going out to Minneapolis, right? Taking the next flight out to Arizona, being with my dad for the next few days, going to the funeral, being there for my family, and getting back to New York at the end of it, like walking in, seeing where my bags were that I had dropped after we came back from Europe, right? But coming back and like dropping my wife brought my suit out for me, right? And being able to just collect myself, take a breath, and be like, what just happened, right? But I'll say that what got me through that was just having an incredible. It's at times like that, right? of great stress and distress, when you really become appreciative of the support systems you have around you. And I'll never forget from, obviously friends and family. Josh, you're definitely one of them, right? And reached out after that. But also, my coworkers at the time, like they rallied together, and I got a message from, my boss and then one of my key, reports, and they were just like, take your time. We got this. Right. Seeing that from people, again, friends and family, it was like one of those things where it was definitely the biggest challenge I ever had, but you realize that you can't go into these things alone. And that's when the power of community really steps up. So it was, obviously a sad moment, but at the same time, this like incredible like feeling that, I had such a great group of people around me, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Yeah, that's excellent. Good takeaway. It takes a village and pretty much everything in life.
Certainly does.
Cool. We'll just a couple more questions here, maybe on a lighter note. What are some of your daily rituals, like what that you find most important? What's kind of a typical day for you look like?
Yeah, so it's funny because like I joke with my wife that we're childless by decision, a couple here in New York, which affords me to do some things that the 13-year-old version of Rich Wagner thinks are really awesome.
Yeah.
So I, when I was, I'm a like dyed in the wool dork. When I was a kid, I was, an avid chess player, competitive chess player. I'd travel all over the country, the world. Yeah, Josh knows the stories. And I also, I love basketball, love playing basketball, love watching my Arizona Wildcats. So I get to like do all those things as an adult. Things I thought I was always going to grow out of. I didn't, which is awesome. And so I, every day at lunch, I take, 20 minutes, whatever it is, step away from my desk and go watch some, like a chess tournament or something the chess online, the online community in chess right now is amazing, especially since the pandemic. So that's part of my daily ritual. And I go play I play rec league basketball, most nights every week. And I'll tell you, like I played high school ball. I didn't play college ball. But the New York City rec league scene is like out of this world. Really? It's like it makes every other organized ball I've ever played seem like nothing, right? It's like guys who played D1, D3. Yeah, it's quite the feeling when it's quite the feeling to get dunked on in a rec league game, but it's another one too to throw an alley-oop at a guy who used to, play for Xavier, right? Like happened to me a couple of years ago. It was awesome. Or, I used to play, stop with the pandemic, but, our center in another rec league team was a left tackle for the Dallas Cowboys a while ago. And I'll tell you, you throw it into Big Mac down in the post, it's a drop step and a dunk. There's nothing anyone can do to stop a 330-pound man.
Yeah, I'm not gonna box that dude out for sure. That's awesome, man. Yeah. Who are like some of your mentors? I know you mentioned a couple names, but a couple mentors, and then maybe like a piece of advice that stuck with you.
Sure. Yeah. So I mentioned Ken Ernsting and Justin Silver. Worked with those guys back at Ability and Inovalon. Actually, Justin Silver was a WashU guy, Josh, a little bit before our time.
I think the name sounds familiar.
Yeah. Another big mentor of mine, who I still talk to regularly, he was the CEO of Ability and had been the CEO of McKesson and couple other companies, a gentleman by the name of Mark Polito. And he gave me some really good advice when I took this job. I talked to him and asked his opinion, and he said to me, because he had worked in the healthcare space, the provider space for a while, and he said, and I think this could be applicable in any industry for that matter, but it was very applicable in healthcare. He said, don't try to tell a provider what their workflow should be. Said, develop tools that accommodate a workflow. Don't try to define the workflow, right? Like, and it makes sense, right? Like, who's going to listen to someone trying to sell you some tech tool? All you have to do is like drastically change your day-to-day schedule and this thing will work for you. Like, that's nonsense. Like, who's going to use that? But it's true. And it's, one of the key value I talk to my team about all the time is we're a listening company, right? We want to listen to our customer, listen to the market, listen to each other. We're respectful, but certainly above all else, listen to our customer and let them tell us what their workflow looks like, right? How our tool can be configured in a better way to service like what they are using. And so we've made a tool that's highly configurable versus customizable. I think there needs to be a distinction drawn. Infinitely configurable, right? Limited customization, and that's something we offer to our customers, and I think it really helps solve a lot of challenges they see on the front lines.
Yeah, no, that's
good advice.
Sounds like great advice. Yeah.
I've got a personal question for you, and then we got one final question. Starting with the personal one, what is the craziest thing you've ever done?
Oh God!
Oh, crazy
spot.
Crazy. Doesn't.
I think I'm going to say this one because Josh was there. My bachelor party. We did it was a two-part answer. So first of all, we did a roast of me, which was it's always fun to hear your closest friends just dig you as hard as they can. But at the same time, it was like we were at this it was like a Hawaiian kind of theme, or it was a Hawaiian barbecue kind of a thing, and they did a whole pig roast. Yeah. And at the end, they had the two eyeballs of the pig, right? And I was forced to eat one of them, and my brother, like Pat, like big props here, volunteered to have the other one. And it was an eyeball chased with a shot of whiskey. Oh. That might have been the craziest, the weirdest thing I've ever done. Especially when you think about how big a pig's eye is and all like the veins and all that. It was pretty gross. I can't believe I was able to keep it down, but I'll say that.
That's gnarly.
What was the other question?
That's terrible.
Final question, I guess, for you.
Oh.
Back to serious. No, not totally serious, but who are some colleagues that you respect most in your industry?
There's one quote that I always remember. I'm not going to put myself in the same stratosphere as Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn, because that'd be insane. But Reid Hoffman has a famous quote that, at least it's attributed to him, I think is really, really valuable for any entrepreneur or anyone in launching a new product. He said, if you wait if you've launched your beta product and you're not embarrassed by it, you've waited too long. Mm-hmm. And I think that's great feedback for anyone launching a product, or at least starting a company, right? It's customer feedback is critical. You got to get out there, even if it's shameful.
Yeah.
Get out there, hear what your customers are saying. Customers are very forgiving, especially if they're part of that first cohort who feel like they're building something with you. So I think that's the subtext there. And I would say that's definitely some advice to follow.
Yeah, that's excellent.
All that.
It goes along with something I got from one of my mentors. He said, learn to fail and fail quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of in the same vein there. It's, it's cool. Well, hey, I appreciate you sharing that, Rich. I'm going to kind of wrap things up here. For everybody that has been listening, we've been talking with Rich Wagner, who is the CEO of Raven Health. Rich, where can people learn more about you and what you're up to over at Raven?
ravenhealth.com is a good way to find us. We have social media profiles. Just basically Google us, you'll find us. I'd love to hear if you're happen to be an ABA clinician and you want to learn more. Feel free to reach out. We're always looking to chat.
All right, excellent, Rich. Hey, well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to meet you. And yeah, thank you to our listeners for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning into the podcast today. We're going to go grab some tacos and beer, and we hope to catch you on the next one.